All right, had to change cameras. Battery died in the Sony, and I got the Canon working again. And this was total random decision to burn up here today. And I forgot the rest of the batteries for the Sony. Thankfully, the Canon's back with us. The trials and tribulations, isn't it? Being a one-man show. Oops. Okay, let's get right into it. Port Alberni. Semi-hometown, Vancouver Island. Listen to this. Hi, Steve. Thank you for providing this site to enlighten us on the subject of Sasquatch / Bigfoot. We've needed something like this for a long time, and I, for one, cannot understand why the public has been purposely left in the dark regarding these beings. Me neither. I'm 68 years old and retired now, living in Winnipeg, Manitoba. How the hell do you go from Port Alberni and Barkley Sound to Winnipeg, Manitoba? Never been there, so I can't knock it. Just saying, though. My story is a short one, but nevertheless, I feel it needed to be told. It happened back in Vancouver Island, where I lived for 4 years, from 1978 to 1981. I attended Malaspina College, and thereafter graduating from a fish culture technology program, was involved with numerous fisheries contracts, working with salmon and trout enhancement projects on the island. My incident occurred near Port Alberni, while heading to a junior ranger camp which was being used as a base for our team, which was involved in determining coho salmon recruitment numbers in feeder streams in the area. I was driving a Pontiac Firebird at the time, and was headed to camp from Nanaimo. This was my first time on this job. I decided to leave late in the evening so I could be at camp early enough. The location of our camp was a considerable distance up a well-used logging road in the vicinity of Port Alberni. The weather had been fine when I left Nanaimo, but as I reached the logging road, it started to pour out. The rain was pelting my car so badly that I had to slow down considerably, to a point where I could barely make out the road in front of me. Nobody else was on the road at the time, and as I made my way along for a few miles peering out the windshield, I tried to focus on the road ahead. Suddenly, from my right side, a huge reddish-brown figure shot out from the bushes and quickly crossed my line of sight. It happened so fast, I didn't even react to it by stepping on my brakes. What I saw was a huge, matted, shaggy mass of hair that completely engulfed my entire windshield. I made out what looked like an arm swinging across the front of my car, but couldn't make out anything else. In 3 seconds, this figure was gone. It startled me so badly that there's no way I was going to stop my car to investigate. To this day, I think about how massive this thing was. I only saw roughly half of its body height in front of me. No shoulders and no head, because it towered over my vehicle out of my sight. Even if there are grizzly bears on the island, there's no way a bear could be that tall above my car. No way. And elk don't have shaggy reddish hair like I saw. Since that time, I've heard many reports in Vancouver Island where people have seen reddish-brown Sasquatches, and I'm certain that's what I saw. This topic has intrigued me ever since the Patterson film came out. You've got to be completely stupid not to believe these things exist, with all the evidence out there. I've told people what I saw back then, but all they've done is laugh and ignore this evidence, saying it's all my imagination. Steve, to the non-believers out there who say it's all a bunch of nonsense, I'd like to say this. If you haven't done the research on Bigfoot Sasquatch topic, the fact that you criticize the people that have done their homework and have studied the facts and all the evidence just shows how ignorant and stupid you really are. Wake up, for God's sakes. Anyway, thanks again, Steve, for leading the charge in the struggle to find the truth. I hope we will all know what is happening out there in our wilderness areas before I pass on. Stay safe. All right, well, thanks for that email. And I'm sure, as you know, you're not alone, especially in Port Alberni. There's a piss load of sightings around Port Alberni, and I'm pretty sure that specific reddish-brown being still lives there. Because I've had a few emails coming from Port Alberni with the exact same description. And coincidentally, when my grandfather ran into that one face-to-face in July at the head of the San Juan Valley, in broad daylight, he described it the exact same way, reddish-brown. So, there you go. You're not the only one, and like I said, to all the people that don't believe, let them go back to their chronic buying of toilet paper when the earth's falling apart. I gotta have fun with that one. You can't not. Greetings. My name is Chris, and I'm a musician in Texas. I grew up an Oklahoma farm boy and spent most of my time in the woods from a very early age. As an adult, I've toured and recorded with many of the biggest names in country music, and have traveled the world extensively since the age of 16, including USO tours to Iraq and Afghanistan. I'm extremely open-minded, yet even with a multitude of unexplainable events in my life, I have the personality that will drive myself insane researching and attempting to understand and explain a thing before I accept that there is no rational explanation. As a musician, I frequently find myself on lonely stretches of highway around Texas in the Southwest. I'm often on a bus, but I've done more than my share of driving all night alone. I've seen plenty of roadside tragedy, death, and high strangeness. The following are two accounts that were beyond any attempt I can make to explain them. I simply saw what I saw, and it is what it is. Thus I must accept it. Firstly, Valentine's weekend of 2019, I played an event called the Love Inn at the old Lukenbach Dance Hall near Fredericksburg, Texas. That would be the same Lukenbach that William Whalen immortalized. There is no actual town. You leave the highway and travel a few miles down a curvy county blacktop past an old one-room prairie schoolhouse and a few scattered farmhouses. The road tees in front of the dance hall, post office, and general store. This little road softly doglegs near its terminus at the dance hall, and it runs along a small watershed known as the South Grape Creek, which it meets at the north end of the dogleg. That night, I departed around 2 a.m. after visiting with fans, loading out, and setting up. The crowd had all left by that point, and the area was quite deserted. I departed, beginning my 2-hour sojourn home, and was still getting settled in as I passed the school and entered the gentle curve to the right. Ahead of me, between an eighth and a quarter mile away, the road began its gentle curve back to the left, where it meets the creek. As I rounded the curve to the right, my headlights illuminated the tree line running in a narrow fringe between the road and the creek. When my lights fell squarely on the woods, I immediately saw two large pale yellow eyes, about 8 to 10 feet above the level of the road in the edge of the trees. My immediate thought was that I was seeing an owl. I had no more than thought that, then it moved, and the form to which those eyes belonged became visible. As the eyes suddenly began to move towards the ground, several things occurred to me at once that gave me a great apprehension. At this point, I feel I must say, growing up dirt poor in the sticks of Oklahoma, I spent a great deal of time in the woods, often alone, often in the dark, hunting for survival. Batteries cost money, so a flashlight wasn't a common accessory. It was generally just myself and either a 12 gauge or an old lever action 30-30, which I could knock skeet out of the air with, both of them. I've encountered more critters in the dark than I can recount, including big cats. I say this not to sound braggadocious, but merely to impress upon the listener that I'm not easily fooled or spooked, even in the dark, in the middle of nowhere. Aside from that, I'm nearly 7 feet tall, so it takes a lot to make me feel threatened. I have joked my biggest fear of running into Bigfoot is that it might think I'm one of them and decide it likes me in a biblical sense. That wouldn't be good, especially when there probably isn't enough wax strips on the planet to make one of those things attractive. The first realization was that the eyes were unlike anything I'd ever seen. As I said, the nearest thing I could compare them to was an owl. The thing was, they looked to be absolutely massive, and even more disturbing still, they appeared to be as wide or wider apart than the width of my entire head. Remember a while back, you guys, I told you about the measurements on a massive grizzly bear, or a brown bear? 4 3/4 inches from socket to socket, and the skull is a massive monster grizzly bear to 5 inches. Huge, all right? So the description of the gap in the eyes in this thing makes it frickin' ridiculous. Then as the eyes began moving towards the ground, I apprehended a massive humanoid figure, no neck, and disproportionately long arms, appearing to be covered in dark brown to black hair. I immediately thought of the tall, glowing-eyed monster in the opening credits of the old Scooby-Doo cartoons. The former dropped in a surprisingly agile fashion down to the ground, the eyes glowing through the underbrush a couple of feet off the ground, as I continued straight for it, approaching the curve back to the left. I was absolutely struck with the feeling that it was in my best interest that this critter assumed I didn't see it. I've never been that unnerved with the knowledge something is looking at me ever in my life. Again, I've nearly been shot out of the air in a Blackhawk by RPG fire. This thing, having a clear line of sight of me, likely before I had eyes on it, was far scarier. I had only been going around 30 miles per hour. As I continued on, without speeding up or slowing down, fearing that the change in speed, the engine timer might cause it to stand up and prepare to fight, which I absolutely didn't want. Such as with deer, I find they're less likely to charge in front of you or into the side of your car if you just maintain your speed and heading. I've wondered if animals don't take it as a challenge or a threat when you slow down, especially if they're accustomed to seeing or hearing traffic. I anxiously passed the eyes at an agonizing 30 miles per hour and only a few feet from where the beast lay prostrate peering back at me. With arms like that, it absolutely could have reached out and smacked the car as I passed. I watched intently in the mirror as I climbed over a gentle hill, and once out of sight, I put my foot in it and put as much space between us as I could, as expeditiously as possible. I have been back since, and actually arrived early enough to investigate that area in the daylight, to give me a better sense of scale and understanding of what I saw. There was absolutely nothing else to explain what I witnessed that night. I've long believed they existed and were out there. As a kid, I heard stories of them from the local Comanche and Apache tribes. That being said, whenever I thought of all the time I spent in the woods, I didn't figure they were indigenous to the area, had been run out long ago, or those tribes brought those stories to Indian territory from somewhere else, considering how many times they'd been relocated. Yet I think back to the countless instances of being alone in the woods as a child when things became painfully quiet and I knew I was being watched by what I could only assume to be a predator. And I realize now I very well could and most likely did encounter them. Again, I assumed it was maybe a panther or some such thing. I didn't really consider that it could well have been one of the great ones. Here comes my token plane. Right over top of me. Every time. My second unexplained encounter is not one of the Sasquatch variety, but you might well appreciate the story. In 2015, I was living in DeWitt County, Texas, about 20 miles south of Cuero, C-U-E-R-O, about an hour southeast of San Antonio. There's been a rash of reports of chupacabra, including remains sent to the A&M University for study from that area. There's also dash cam video from a sheriff's deputy of the creature running down a gravel road. Let me just say, I think this is definitely a misappropriation of terminology as I understand it. I know the original reports of chupacabra out of Puerto Rico, I believe it was of a flying dog-like creature that drank the blood of chickens. That's not what folks around South Texas are calling chupacabra. One day in mid-July, I'd driven a couple miles south of town to my in-laws' old family farm to turn off the irrigation to the pecan grove. My 6-year-old son and 4-year-old daughter were with me. I've been playing with them at the house and was uncharacteristically in shorts and flip-flops since I was turning off the water. I generally can be found in pants and boots, even lounging around in the house. We pulled out of the driveway and after locking the gate, turned right, heading west on a gravel road towards the highway some 2 miles away. It was around 6 p.m. and the summer sun was still high in the western sky. It was not yet low enough to affect my eyes. I never drive fast on roads like that, and out there, I would let the kids forego their seatbelts until we neared the highway. If you encounter any traffic, it's usually an old farmer checking on his cows or moving a tractor. They're more likely to stop in the middle of the road to visit with you than run you over. I was driving a Volvo XC90 SUV. It's my wife's, don't judge me. I don't even have a clue what that is. The kids were scooted to the center of the back seat so I was able to see the road. We frequently scare up jackrabbits who'd spring up and dart along the road in front of us, and they enjoyed watching for them. We drove about a quarter mile with plowed farmland on each side of the road until we approached a small creek that was densely overgrown and a wide swath on each bank. The county hadn't been out to mow since spring, and wild grass is nearly 5 feet high in the bar ditches all along the road. Suddenly, 40 yards or so ahead of us, something exited the tall grass on the right side of the road. The closest thing I compare the creature to is a kangaroo with mange. In regards to height, the bottom of its head, jawline, was about the same height as the hood of the Volvo. It was a splotchy, mottled gray covered in sparse, bristly hair. It rather reminded me of a wild hog's skin than hair, and overall had a color similar to an elephant. The head was like that of a kangaroo, with a long snout, tall elliptical ears, and dark round eyes. It was bipedal, and had very short arms that it held close to its body, almost like a T-Rex. Its gait was probably the most perplexing, awkward locomotion I think I've ever seen. It looked like the little wooden toy dogs with different sized wheels that a child pulls on a string, giving it the appearance of walking. I think those toys are back from 1960, aren't they? I'm sure you can Google them up, you guys, if you're not from our area, our era. It wobbled in the least graceful fashion of anything I've ever seen. It moved slowly as it ambled, scarcely lifting its feet across the road, never looking our direction or acknowledging that we were there. Both my children began yelling wildly, "Daddy, what is that? What is that?" I mumbled, "I'm not sure." I rolled nearly to a stop, studying this thing intently, with all my focus before it went into the grass on the south side of the road. I gunned the vehicle and slid up even where it disappeared into the grass. I could see the grass waving to and fro as it continued at a relaxed pace. I could easily overtake it with a fast walk. I was surprised when I realized it had somehow cleared a barbed wire fence with no apparent issues. I reached under the seat, grabbed my S&W 40 caliber pistol, and I had a third-gen U.S. Army issue Colt Peacemaker 45 in the passenger seat I'd been letting my son shoot earlier in the day out of the vehicle and into the grass behind it. I'd only taken a couple of bounds into the ditch before the reality situation set in. I was in shorts, flip-flops, and had two children in the car sitting in the middle of the road. Beyond that, I had absolutely no clue what this thing was, if it was aggressive, or what it might do if I cornered it. I had no intention of harming it. I simply wanted a better look at the creature and maybe get a photo with my phone. Letting my better judgment wrest me from my mission, I just stood silently as I watched the swaying grass until it intersected and disappeared into the tree line along the creek. I returned to the car and the silent, two wide-eyed kiddos. I told them, "Well, y'all saw what I did, and you know about as much as I do." I don't know if this is a true cryptid, some strange mutation, or crossbreeding or what. There are many exotic game ranches around South Texas. I've wondered if something just escaped and bred with something it shouldn't have. Whatever it was, it's undoubtedly a flesh and blood creature. It seemed neither scared nor aggressive. To me, it looked poorly adapted for its surroundings, but who's to say? It's possible that its gait was a product of some injury. Yet again, I have no idea. Whatever it is, I think its population is growing, same as Bigfoot, in addition to being displaced by the oil boom here in the Eagle Ford Shell. Well, those are my stories. I've greatly enjoyed your channel, and I'm a long-time listener. You're more than welcome to share any of this. I'd rather remain somewhat anonymous, not so much for my sake, but for the reputation of some of the entertainers I work for, who, although wouldn't doubt my story, likewise wouldn't appreciate the attention on the organization. Take care, and thanks again, CDW. Okay, well, thanks for the email, man. Pretty sure it's obvious what you saw in your first experience, right? And, but that second thing you saw, what the hell was that? Holy shit, what a description. And it's funny when you said it looked like a kangaroo. You didn't mention if it had a tail or not. You didn't mention it had a tail. You're pretty detailed in your observations. I'm sure you would have said if it had a tail. But putting that description together, that thing's not a cute and cuddly little bugger, is it? Strange as hell. And you're right, I've been to Texas a lot. I love Texas, actually. And there is a pile of exotic non-native species that have been imported to Texas for certain, for a lot of those big private hunting clubs. Who knows what the hell that thing was. Too bad you didn't get a picture of it. And if you've seen it, chances are somebody else seen it pretty high. For sure. Huh. Crazy. Well, anyway, got to move along. If any of you need to get something off your chest, you can email it here to me at tellmystoryhowtohunt.com or sharemystoryhowtohunt.com, and eventually we'll get to it. And sooner than later, I'm going to get some help on board with all this, and we'll really start doing something with it worthwhile. But until then, you're going to have to just put up with me and all my screw-ups.